Welcome to the CANary Cast, the official podcast of the Mr. Canary Company. Before we get started today, please do me a favor. Comment, like, and subscribe to receive notifications when we drop new episodes. This helps new people find the podcast and grows our reach. Picking up where we left off, here we go. Episode number 6, From Sheltered Workshop to Competitive Employer, Part 2. We welcome back to the podcast Pam Verbarg, the Executive Director of the ARC of Greater Boone County. Hi, Pam.
Hi, Nathaniel.
So last episode, we talked through much of the planning for the workshop transformation. You had just explained how we needed to call a last-minute audible to make sure we honored a promise that anyone who wanted to work would still be able to work after the workshop's restructuring. That fully set the stage and left us right on the cusp of the ARC and MME pulling the trigger on this restructuring. Today, we're going to dig in together on how it actually went once we pulled that trigger. We're going to hash out what happened, what went right, what went wrong, and where things stand after the dust settled. So, Pam, start us off. Talk about what went into planning the actual day of the transformation at the workshop, and what day did we end up making the day?
Well, the day shifted a couple of times, and there was a date that I kind of pushed in one of our transformation meetings, and everyone said, "Oh, I'm not sure about that." And that was pulling the plug in October 1st of 2024. And everybody else was kind of like, well, we still need to do all these different things. So I think that was in early 2024 when we had that discussion. So our compromise date at that point in time was January 1st of 2025. And that put us within 90 days of the end of the transformation grant process because it ended in March. So we knew that was happening. And probably around the 1st of July, you and Doug came to me and said, Pam, we've been thinking and we've been talking, and we think we want to change the date. So we agreed at that point in time, we were going to push the date to October 1st. So that's kind of how that happened. And really the discussion was from both of you was, we've been talking about it, and we know that if we make that change in October, we still have some of the guardrails up with the transformation process that we could make some adjustments on the fly. And if we made those adjustments in January, that doesn't give us much time to make that happen. But by doing it in October, we still had a 6-month support where we had some extra things in place that could support us through that process. And I think we were also at that point where I don't remember who said it, but one of you said, we've been talking about this long enough. It's time to just rip off the Band-Aid and make it happen. So that was where we made the change. And why? Because we were to the point where we've been talking about it. And then I think some of our staff in the background are going, is it really going to happen? And again, from my standpoint, remember, I've been hearing about workshops closing since 1989.
Yeah.
So I'm sure some of the staff were getting to that point. You guys have been talking about this for a year and a half now, and it hasn't happened yet. So is it really happening? So that was the motivation, was to let's get it done while we still had some guardrails.
Yeah, and I won't speak for Doug Herlensky. For our listeners who don't know, Doug is the Director of Operations here at the ARC of Greater Boone County, and he was instrumental to this process as well. I'm not going to speak for him, but I think I kind of had that sense of, we had done all the planning we could think to do. All that was left was waiting to see which of the unknowns kind of showed up and demanded our attention. And so we kind of reached that point where, it was just time to tackle it and start letting those things, come to the surface that we hadn't planned for, or that turned out to be different than we expected. So we could have that time, like you said, Pam, on the back end to pivot and save ourselves that time that way. So October 1st, 2024, that was the day. And last episode, I was able to talk the listeners through what a typical day in the sheltered workshop at Main Street Marketing looked like. So let's talk about what things looked like on October 1st of 2024 after we had ended our use of sheltered work and began being a direct employer of workers with disabilities paying competitive wages on an hourly basis. So I think we talked last time about how we ended in two main roles for our workers with disabilities who'd previously been workshop participants. We had manufacturing associates. Those are our individuals who had either completely demonstrated the ability to perform at 50% productivity or were well on their way based on their workstation interviews. Those individuals began working on scheduled shifts, sometimes multiple shifts a week. We had a morning shift and an afternoon shift, Monday through Friday. Some individuals were scheduled for up to 3 hours of work at a time. Other individuals might only do 1 or 2 hours within a particular shift. But regardless of how much an associate worked, there was something called a daily work assessment form. And that was a crucial form for us to be able to track individual productivity so that we would have a means of creating individualized coaching plans. So whether we saw great opportunities for individuals who, should start focusing on what they needed to do to reach a pay raise based on their productivity, or for individuals who maybe had a great workstation interview, but as they settled into a regular routine, maintaining high productivity, showed as being a challenge. So either way, we needed the data to be able to objectively pay individuals based on that sliding scale of productivity pay. I think it climbs something like $1.17 an hour for every 10% increase in productivity. But without the data, we wouldn't have an objective way of really helping each individual employee grow. So that's what it looked like for our manufacturing associates. But then our manufacturing interns, who you guys will remember from our Audible, these are individuals who that 50% productivity threshold looked to be very, very far off based on those workstation interviews we did at the late stages of the transformation planning process. So these individuals, we start at 1 hour once a week paying minimum wage, which here in Indiana at present is $7.25 an hour. So we use that 1 hour once a week to first let individuals choose where they want to begin working, but then give them a chance to show their aptitude there, make suggestions of where else they might want to try in order to be successful. And then once they've had multiple rounds of work under their belt, we help them zero in on where they're demonstrating the highest likelihood to succeed so that we can coach them, come up with individualized support. Sometimes this is as basic as using a countdown timer to help them develop that internal idea of pacing. Sometimes it's more complicated than that, but whatever it is, we look at the individual intern and help them to look at where they have the most aptitude and help them develop that one week at a time, one shift at a time. And that's really important because I think you'll remember from episode 1, Pam shared that one of the fiercest criticisms of sheltered work programs were how often they became landing zones for workers with disabilities who would never turn those training opportunities into opportunities for community-based work if that's what the individual desires. So to make sure we didn't have that same cycle repeat in this model, it was really important that we have some metrics to be able to help make sure somebody's on a path for individual growth. And that growth mentality, that idea of continuous personal improvement really was an entire culture change for everybody at Main Street, whether you're one of our manufacturing coaches, whether you're a manufacturing associate or an intern. Really, everybody's held to that expectation of we need to be getting better all the time. It's no longer okay to be in the exact same spot, the exact same level you were a year ago. And so really challenging people to embrace that idea to just strive for those goals that they set during that planning process when we were making the transformation, talking about what sets an individual's best life. Anybody who's familiar with goal setting and actually achieving it will talk about how important it is to actually measure. And so that became a crucial part of what we were doing on a regular basis, which is measuring that work performance and coming up with plans to help individuals grow on a person by person basis. So Pam, I'm sure I missed something in there. What can you think of that I missed that's pertinent to that particular chunk of conversation? What the workshop, how it looked differently pre and post transformation?
I think the other part to touch on is what people's lives look like the rest of the day that they're here,
Yep.
because it used to be folks would come in at 8, they'd leave, between 8 and 10, they would leave between 2 and 4 o'clock, and they'd be in one place.
Yep.
Instead, most individuals are starting in our day services program, and our first hour is usually pretty loose in the day services program just because people are coming and going throughout the course of that. And that program over the last year and a half has changed quite a bit as well, because we've tried a couple of different models with the influx of new people in the program. Obviously, they had to make some changes and added some staff as well. But we initially started that program where individuals were doing sessions with specific staff, and we had staff attempting to specialize in a specific topic. So one person might be doing wellness, and one might be doing cooking, and another's doing work skills. And people would float between a set of classes in the course of a day. We found those shifts throughout the course of the day actually added a ton of inefficiency to the day, and it caused a lot of transitional disruptions. As you know, and listeners, those of you who don't, transitions can be particularly tough, especially if a person is on the autism spectrum and they'll need an extra 10 or 15 minutes to settle into the new routine when that change is made. And the team over in day services gave feedback very quickly. This isn't working because we have, say it's an hour session, and I'm just giving that as a basics. It takes us, 5 minutes to move from one station to another. Then it takes another 10 minutes to get everyone settled. Well, suddenly we've lost 40, now we're down to 45 minutes of our hour on this topic. So they were pressing to get things done, and it was creating more stress, really, not just for the staff, but for the people we support. And it was impacting what they were getting. So instead, they've kind of shifted back to a module based, or, a pod based type learning activity where folks are grouped with like interests, and in groups that mesh well together with employees who work with those particular groups. And in some cases, it might be in a larger room with multiple staff, or it may be in a smaller room with one. But those staff then have a daily schedule of the things they're working on throughout the course of the day. So, and everybody has some similar themes that they're working on, but then there may also be a specialty class that people are working on. In the last episode, I mentioned cooking and technology. We've done work skills classes where a small group may come out and work on those specific things. Same thing happens with our art program, where people come over, do art for a period of time as a specialty, but then spend the rest of the time within their groups. The day services program has also significantly expanded the amount of time they're spending in the community. And again, as Nathaniel mentioned before, having those set schedules is really important so that those individuals who are working, who are wanting to go on community outings, are then able to schedule what community outings they're able to go to around the work schedule too. So we've made other programmatic changes to make those things possible, and again, to continue to enhance everyone's learning. So those individuals who may have had downtime in the workshop now are actually spending time learning work skills, exercising, getting out in the community, doing all of these other things to enhance their lives, enhance their experiences, with the goal of helping them to get to know themselves and their likes and dislikes even better, so they can continue to direct what they want in their lives.
Pam, that is so important. Thank you for catching that. It's easy for me in my role to kind of get tunnel vision thinking about, you know, what the differences were pre and post transformation for the workshop. But really, the entire organization, as we said in the last episode, underwent a transformational change, and so much good has come from that for every department involved. That thank you for calling that out, because again, even just selfishly for my own role, by having that change in daily schedule where folks aren't just on the workshop side of the campus or just the day services side, I think we've had something like a dozen new employees added who had traditionally been on the day services side of the equation, who, because of changing what a typical day looks like here at the Arc of Greater Boone County, those people met new peers who were more work focused. They could have those conversations. They could see for themselves what that was like, and it demystified work to a point where all of a sudden they had the courage to ask to join the intern program and in a lot of cases take on work for the first time. And without that ripple effect of what a typical day looks like having changed, I don't know that those opportunities would have happened, or organically, so to speak, in the old method of things. So I think that's so important to call attention to. And again, that was a huge miss on my part, and I'm sure I'm missing even more. There's always more to be said on this. But for now, let's give the listeners some hard stats. We're going to put some meat on the bones, so to speak, for how this transformation actually impacted things. So as our basis point, in September of 2024, the month before we transformed the way the workshop operated, we had 48 workshop participants working at Main Street pretty much all day, every day throughout the work week. Through the 14C piece rate pay model that Pam explained in the last episode, those participants were earning the hourly equivalent anywhere from 33 cents an hour to about $6 an hour based on their own self-paced work style. As a collective, only 19% of those workshop participants had recorded productivity at or above 50%. So I think that's important to call out. If you remember the 50% productivity threshold being the requirement for being a manufacturing associate, before we pulled the trigger on these changes, only 19% of our, I wanted to say employees. They're employees now, but at the time, workshop participants, only 19% had demonstrated their ability to meet that threshold. So let's compare that to October of 2024, exactly 1 year post-transformation. Main Street recorded 52 combined employees covering both manufacturing associates and manufacturing interns. Hourly pay ranged from $7.25 per hour to $14.50 per hour. As a collective, more than 58% of our employees had recorded productivity at or above 50%. From 19% to 58%, largely the same exact group of folks. That's triple the rate we had pre-transformation. Other statistics that are worth calling out: as a group, as a cohort, MME employees raised their productivity 145% in that first year post-transformation. We had 9 manufacturing interns promoted to manufacturing associates in our first year. And that to us was, at least to me, was one of the most important statistics and milestones, because as a family member of somebody with intellectual disability, it's really important to me that everybody have a clear path to grow and to flourish and not get stuck in these traditional landing zones. And so to be able to demonstrate that we had 9 individuals who started far away from that 90% productivity threshold, but were able to work the program, work that manufacturing intern program successfully, which requires 3 consecutive demonstrations of 50% productivity or higher at a particular workstation. So to have 9 people graduate that program is incredible. We had 18 separate pay raises earned. And again, those pay raises are tied to documented per shift productivity. So those individuals had been able to create an average increase in productivity that they maintained over a 60-day period that is able to get them up that progressive pay scale. So that was wonderful to see. And this one wasn't even part of the plan per se. It had always been a goal, but I don't know that it was a documented part of our transformation plan. But we added 4 new administrative support roles that are staffed by our employees with disabilities. And those roles earn at least $15 an hour. So, Pam, I'm super proud of these statistics. I'm proud of our team and what we've done to be able to even say that those things came true. Because I connect these achievements to names and faces of the people we support, our employees with disabilities. It's personal for me, and I know it's personal for you too. Before I get lost in gushing over these successes, let me get your highlights on what all of these achievements mean to you in the big picture of things.
The biggest thing that stands out on this is the power of expectations. That as we set those higher expectations, people have been able to meet them. And, to see, one of the ladies who just recently was promoted from the intern position, she's in her 70s. She's had a lot of health decline. And she told us when she was hired as an intern, I think she said something along the lines of, I don't know that I'll ever be able to do better.
Yeah.
Um, she's now an associate.
Yes, she is.
So just seeing those types of successes and seeing some people that we never expected to see achieve some of these things is probably the thing that stands out the most in this change. And then again, the folks who've picked up those administrative roles and everyone's excitement about that. And Nathaniel, you focused on our employees. One of the things we didn't focus on was our coaches.
Yes.
Um, this has also not only been transformational for the people that we support, but it's also been very transformational for them as well. Both of them will admit that they told us in meetings leading into this, we're not sure how this is going to work.
Yeah.
And not only are they now helping to support individuals, but they are initiating the ideas of how to support those individuals to do better. And they're coming up with their own ideas. They have taken on additional stuff, such as supporting some of our small business owners. There's been so much growth that's happened that's not even necessarily tied directly to their work, having made that shift from direct support professional to coach, that it's a completely different place than it was before. And we did an interview with one of our clients for Regions Bank not too long ago, and he talked about how different it is, even just walking in the door of the manufacturing area. Everyone's focused, they're cheerful. It's just so different because, and it's just been amazing to see just the shift in how people are so much more self-confident. People are talking about wanting to get community jobs, and some of those are individuals who've never done it. There's just so many tangible and intangible things that we've seen happen in people's lives as we have made some of these changes.
I could not agree more. Thank you so much for bringing that up, Pam. My manufacturing coaches have done an incredible job in rolling with these adjustments. And it's been a total mindset shift. Before I move past it, Pam, you touched on the small business opportunities. Can you say a little more about that? Because that is such a unique thing that we do here at the Arc of Greater Boone County, and Main Street is happy to come alongside and support in the way that we can. But can you explain to the listeners what that is?
Sure. So we have the opportunity along the same time of this transformation grant, because I'm a glutton for punishment. We had the opportunity to apply for some demonstration grants through the state. I guess we'll call it demonstration grant, but they called them innovation pilot projects. And we had proposed one to the state, which went over some major revisions as we implemented it, because the whole idea was supporting individuals that we serve. Initially, it was to be employed in small businesses. And as we dug into that a little bit deeper and we successfully got some people placed in small businesses, one of our big takeaways was those small businesses who are interested and able to take on workers with disabilities are going to do it, regardless of whether there's a grant involved or not. So we had funds left over from that grant, frankly, that we went to the state and said, we need to bounce some ideas off of you because we have these funds available. And we were able to utilize those funds to help, it was about 10 people set up small businesses. So we have a number of people. One person is doing carpet cleaning. We have a person who's doing heat pressing. She's actually going to be on an upcoming episode on the Arc if it hasn't already aired, because of our recording schedule. Um, she does heat pressing. We have a person who has a clothing dyeing business, another person who makes glass jewelry, another person who dabbles in a little bit of
Yeah.
everything, including 3D printing, sewing, and resin jewelry. We have a person who's making hats. And we have we have a series of other supplies that we're going to be working with some other individuals on setting up small businesses. But those individuals who are doing the small businesses, oh, and we have a photographer also. I always forget at least one when I talk about these. But as we were able to do this, we were able to set some individuals up with some small businesses. If they needed business structure, like setting up an LLC, we were able to do that. But we have worked with those individuals and have them using space so that they're able to have their jewelry kiln here on site or their heat press or whatever other supplies that they have. And we're providing some of the supports for them to carry out the business processes. So those individuals all have businesses that are accessible. Their goods are accessible here on site at our main location at 900 West Main Street. And then we also have a booth in Lebanon at a place called Trader Baker. So we've got things there as well. Our goal this next year is also to help them get some websites set up, whether that's through our website and selling through that, or having them set up their individual sites through Music Square. So we're continuing to help them make those businesses a success and investing in them and building, again, further independence.
And it's such a unique opportunity. And it really wouldn't be possible without the change in scheduling that has come about. The original impetus being the transformation of the sheltered workshop into a competitive direct employer. So to me, it's just one of those testimonies of sometimes for all the planning you do, it's sometimes the things that just kind of sneak in unplanned that turn out to be some of the coolest opportunities. I know I feel that way about our administrative support roles, and the small business opportunities for the people we support is just another one of those examples. So Pam, you did a great job explaining the importance of expectation and how important having expectations are. To wrap this all up, can you share what else is your big takeaway that you think from this whole experience is a lesson that our listeners need to remember once this podcast ends?
Boy, I always go back to the setting high expectations, but because I think so many times people with disabilities are told throughout their lives, you can't do that. Can't do that. You'll never be able to do those things. Um, and many of the outcomes of this has been if you can dream it, somebody's going to be able to do
Yeah.
it. So again, just continuing to set that and creating and having the blessing of being able to be creative in what we have done, has, again, for me, also been a huge takeaway because I've truly appreciated our board and the people we support of being accepting of what we've done, because this was a major shift in the organization, and our staff and teams have risen to the occasion to make this happen. And if it wasn't for having a great team in place, it never would have happened. But we find ourselves, doing some things that are a little bit unique
Mm.
today. But and I'll say, it's like the thing I'm probably proudest of in this is many of the organizations who I talked to from all across the country who made transformations and closed their sheltered workshops were only able to continue to hire the 20% of their best workers. And we were able to make it work in a way that accommodated everybody. And yes, while there may be some cost involved with that, the benefit far outweighs the couple $1,000s a year that we spend to do those extra things. So I think it's having that and having a team that's not afraid to speak up when they see something happening um, that they don't fully agree with. And
Mhm.
and we've been really working hard within the culture to grow that everywhere so that everyone feels they can speak up. And you could see through some of the shifts I talked about, it was not just members of our leadership team saying something wasn't working, but it was direct support professionals and our coaches and other people saying we need to try this instead. And building that type of a culture just makes such a big difference within an organization too.
Pam, just thank you for your leadership to make this happen. Every time I share this story, whether it's snippets or the whole story like we've been able to do in these last 2 episodes, I'm reminded of just how much good we accomplished by doing this. Thank you for your countless hours that you put into making this happen. To our audience, I hope this was edifying. If you work in human services, if you know of another organization going through this kind of transformation away from sheltered work, please share these episodes with them. We want others to benefit from our experience learning from both the good and the bad. Use a comment section to share your thoughts in your lived experiences that relate to all of this. Be sure to check out the links in the show notes for more information. And thank you for joining us for this episode of the CANary Cast. Remember, buy a feeder, create a job. See you next time.